Asenivusele maswahla mahle senivusele benkosilenhle nalamuhla kuloko lihlelo Embili kanye libito lami ngingiJohn ngwakaPhirezi Sibongo. Siyajabula kakhulu maswahla mahle ke kuthola ke lithuba lekunivusela ke emakhaya. Sethemba ukuthi niphilile kuphina kuphi lapho ke umsakazo wakithi Eswatini TV ufinyelela khona. Sengisoke isikhathi maswahla mahle lapho ke sinimema khona ukuthi nibe ingcenye yetinkulumo ke lesitaba nato ke kulolu hlelo namuhla. Umuntu nje uyavama lokugcizelela ukuthi luhlelo lolu lufaka onke emaswati kungako nesihloko salo sithi Embili kanye ngiyacela kakhulu nakubantu labadala lokuthi laba labatsativa ngazuthi bancane asibalandze labahleli khona kumbe emakamerweni kumbe la ngaphandle bete batolalela ke tinkulumo letifaka kakhulu kati ke timpilo tabo timpilo temaswati njenganamuhla nje maswati lamahle sikhuluma la ngendzaba ye mgubudla lomusha noma ke new SMME policy loma ke luhlaka lolisukunyiswe ke nguhulumende lolutawusita ukuthi ke laba labanemabhizinisi lasasukuma bakwati ke ukuthi bethole ke kusekeleka simama ke indvuna yelitiko ke indvuna ke yelitiko ke lete mabhizinisi ke nekusebenta ekhaya Ministry of Commerce Industry and Trade ekhaya ke Eswatini umhlonishwa amanqoba ke Khumalo ukuthi nje atochaza lomthetho noma ke lomgubudla noma kumbe lohlaka iSMME policy lesuka ke kumnyaka wa 2024 iye ke kumnyaka wa 2029 which is a 5-year policy lokho ke yasiveta ke sithombe maswahla amahle ukuthi ke sisonke kulendzaba nalabo kumbe labangeva ngathi usayibafaka namuhla in particular young people. I do make a plea kini nibadala ukuthi basonzele ke batoyilalela ke inkulumo ngicela ke kwethula ke sivakashi sethu namuhla maswahla amahle indvuna imibuzo asifole ke sithathe nje lithuba lokubingelela nokwemukela ihlelweni sibonga isikhathi sakho kuba nathi ngicela kupha lithuba lokuthi uvusele maswati.
Sivusele Perez siyabonga kakhulu kuba khona lamhla emsakadweni Eswatini TV sitokhuluma nemaswati ngale policy lensha lesibita nge-MSME policy lekuyipolicy lebuke ukuthi bosomabhizinisi labancane ikakhulu bemaswati sibathuthukisa njani siqhubeke mgwaqo lesolo sihamba ngawo kuze ukuthi umnotho uthuthukiswe ngemaswati.
Thank you so much once again, Honorable Minister. I think one of the highlights for the year 2025 that's newly begun, it's our third month, is the opening of a parliament by His Majesty King Mswati III, who on the speech from the throne declared the year 2025 as the year of transformation into the promised land. But perhaps to give it a context in your portfolio, what does transformation from within the Ministry of Commerce, Industry and Trade, what would it mean for us to embrace transformation in this sector?
For us as a ministry, John, there's a few things that the speech from the throne, evoked in our emotions and our intellect. Number one, it was this idea that for this country to survive, the people of Eswatini need to step up. And step up means that take charge of their own future and their own fortunes, and command space in the business sector, in the trade sector, in the industrialization sector. So we are working, hard and tirelessly to continue providing not only an enabling environment, but also opportunities, partly through the MSME policy we're going to talk about here, and partly through a new policy we will be unveiling soon, the investment policy, to say how do we, in the context of the citizens' economic empowerment agenda that we now have since the Act was passed, see a whole lot more dominance and prominence of the Maswati businesses, particularly in sectors of the economy where before today they were not participating. So that is what we see as a transformation. We also see transformation as a technological transformation. We really want to ensure that we automate and digitize all the offering that government makes for entrepreneurs, large and small, and ensure that we produce best-in-class service offerings in order to enable the business environment to be fertile. Things like the one-stop shop project that we're about to launch, where you will walk in as a young business person into one office, and in that particular office you find all the things you need. You don't have to go to Home Affairs, you don't have to go to ERS, you don't have to go to other service providers, but everything will be found in one specific office called the one-stop shop, and that will transform, for example, how we do business.
Of course, thank you so much, Honorable Minister. And I think one of the issues that really intrigued me later on after His Majesty's speech from the throne was the remarks that were made by Honorable Neil Rickenberg when he delivered his budget speech for the year 2025-26, and highlighting a few challenges or few giants, as he mentioned them. And one of them was corruption, you know, and one of them was the mentality of mediocrity, you know, which he also mentioned as a challenge that we need to face, you know.
Right.
And I think I would want to bring that in the context of business, in the context of entrepreneurship, because we're here to talk about the SME policy today, you know.
Right.
The mindset of mediocrity, Honorable Minister, in business, how does this impact the business space, especially small business people, the mindset of mediocrity?
I think that's a debate that we can continue to have, whether it is actually mediocrity or it is capacitation, because the performance might be mediocre, but I'm not persuaded that the mindset is mediocrity.
Okay.
I think we have a challenge here where, and let me speak about myself. I went through my entire high school education, primary and high school education in Eswatini, and my entire tertiary education, and I only got to understand what business is and how it works once I was employed. So to then expect that you will have a community of people and a cohort of entrepreneurs that will be more than mediocre when you have not necessarily, as an ecosystem, invested in knowledge, in capacitation, in building up that foundation that junior achievement, for example, is now building in our schools, and Enactors is building in our universities, and a whole lot of other programs that government has started, supporting, that will actually inculcate this culture of entrepreneurship, so that by the time the person finishes their high school education, they have a spectrum of options that they can look at, and one of them is, I want to go into entrepreneurship, and I think the mediocre performance, the minister is right, but I don't think the mindset is necessarily a mediocre mindset. I think we have not necessarily in years past, as I've made an example of my own self, invested in enough knowledge to allow these young people in particular to then say, we can stand up and be the difference that we want to see.
Yes, and I think we are here today to talk about the SME policy, which I think is here also perhaps to try and correct some of those situations, like where you come from yourself, and we have a lot of young people as we speak that aspire to be business people, but they have not been introduced or have not been oriented into the industry, and we are doing this interview against the backdrop of His Majesty pleading with stakeholders to support, to nurture, and to grow businesses, and the Minister of Commerce, Industry and Trade then newly launches the SME policy afterwards, How is this going to ensure that this speaks to the aspirations or the wishes of His Majesty in terms of the nurturing, the supporting of young business people in the country?
You see, John, when His Majesty said government must adopt the Nkwe manner of doing things. If you're any Liswati, you understand instinctively and intuitively what that means. But in my mind, it has been very key to start implementing things as soon as His Majesty pronounces them. So that's why we've launched this policy soon after the speech from the throne. If you remember, the other thing that His Majesty said on the speech from the throne was he would like to see SETCO, operate more in the grassroots. establishments of our Tinkundla centers, and helping young people in particular, women in particular, and those that may be disadvantaged to harness those business opportunities. In my mind, then, the timing couldn't be more opportune, because we are saying, as a ministry, this is now, the backbone upon which every initiative for MSME development, not just in the Ministry of Commerce, across every ministry. Could it be the Ministry of Agriculture? Could it be the Ministry of ICT? Could it be the Ministry of Tinkundla, the Ministry of Sports, Youth and Culture? Could it be the Ministry of Works? We've got many youth programs across various ministries, but all of these youth programs have to follow this particular pathway. What does this MSME policy seek to achieve? Number one, creating an enabling environment. Number two, creating business knowledge. So we need to invest in business knowledge. Number three, access to finance. Number four, capacity building. Capacity building is different from knowledge, because knowledge is one thing, but capacity is something else. Because sometimes we may confuse the two and conflate the two, but capacity is now taking the knowledge and transforming the knowledge into actionables. So capacity building is a strong pillar on its own. And then access to markets is another pillar. But we've added an additional pillar, a new pillar in this policy that hasn't existed before. That is infrastructure and IT infrastructure. Why? Because trade has changed. Transactions and transactability has changed. Everything needs to be done on digital platforms, and we want to make sure that we build everything based on a strong digital platform. So I believe strongly that as we unpack this policy today, it will be super abundantly clear to our listeners that the government of the Kingdom of Eswatini has taken His Majesty's Nkwe policy literally, and with the urgency that it deserves, to try and create a more robust MSME landscape where Emaswati will actually be more successful.
Yeah, and I think I listened to a presentation some years ago. Was it when a government was mobilizing funds or consolidating investments,
Sure.
some of which had come through the private sector?
Yeah.
That was back during the time of the late Prime Minister, Honorable Mandvulo,
Right.
where the director at SA Park was saying the challenge with our country is not that we do not have legislation or policies that would guide us into where we are. And I say this with all due respect to the policy that
Sure.
your office
Of course.
launched, Honorable
Of
Minister, to say some of these policies are said to be gathering dust, And I need you to help us to understand or even to appreciate what we mean when we say the minister has launched a policy, because to some it may look like a document that will just sit there. What will it do for me? Because a policy is not a law; it is not enforceable. It is not something that we can say by all means and might we need to do this. Can you help us understand what we mean when we say the ministry has a policy that it believes will help Emaswati, in particular young people, to grow thriving businesses?
So for you to better understand what we mean when we say we have a new policy, you also need to understand the process of the formulation of the policy. It begins with heavy consultations with all the relevant stakeholders, and the question that we need to answer is, what is your business problem and how would you like to see us solve it? And then we gather all of that information, and then we package it, in chunks that are consumable. To say, most people are saying we don't have access to markets, as an example, which is one of the pillars. We are able to do all of these projects, but once we produce, we then are laden with stocks that sit until they expire, or they waste because nobody is taking them off our hands. So the policy then says, how does government solve that problem? That then informs the government strategy then that says of all the state-owned enterprises that we have across all the ministries, whether it's the Agricultural Development Fund, the Youth Enterprise Fund, the MSME Fund in the Ministry of Commerce, the Loan Guarantee Scheme, how does it solve that particular problem? So without a policy, you might be tempted to do what I call boiling the ocean. In other words, responding to everything and anything that sort of crosses your path, and not being focused, and not having a clear pathway to say the MSME sector in Eswatini wants us to solve these problems. So the policy has been able to crystallize and filter the universe of aspirations that exists in the SMME space to say what are the key things that we need to develop. My specific philosophy is you need to spend 20% of your time developing policy and 80% of your time implementing policy. So one of the reasons I'm here today is to assure the nation that they will see a step change in how we implement the policy.
Thank you so much, Honorable Minister. And I think one of the issues we will talk to when we come back from the break is one of the FinScope survey speaks to a report that says we have about 70,000 small businesses in the country, of which 75% of those are informal businesses, meaning those businesses are not registered. What is the challenge and how is the MSME policy going to solve that? We will be back in a short while.
Welcome to Eswatini Lifestyle. This is your ultimate guide to the entertainment, to the lifestyle and the culture of Eswatini.
Eswatini Lifestyle.
Eswatini Lifestyle.
Eswatini Lifestyle.
From 6:30 to 7 p.m.
On Eswatini TV, Sibuko Semaswati.
On Eswatini TV, Sibuko Semaswati.
It is important every now and then to check, am I still in the receiving hand of God, or am I in the receiving hand of the lies from the enemy?
Salvation is free because Christ paid for everything, and that's true. But discipleship will cost you everything.
Love each other as if your life depends on it.
As a canvas reflects the nature of a personality or an artist, so creation teaches us about who God is.
We are made great by becoming small. We are exalted when we're humble.
Sibuyela maswahla mahle sehlelweni Embili kanye. We are here dissecting the new SMME policy, which is a 2024-25-29 strategy, which is a 5-year strategy. And when we before we went on the break, I was saying the latest FinScope survey indicates that we have about 70,000 small and small and medium enterprises in the country, of which 75% of those are informal businesses. And this is a big challenge, Honorable Minister, and I don't even know if we can have the confidence to declare this as businesses if they are informal. You know, what is the challenge? Why isn't a huge number of this kind of enterprises being formalized? You know, and how is this policy going to help us to sort this problem? Because if they are not formal, it means stakeholders are not recognizing them as well.
Well, maybe first of all, let me share with you the latest statistics as of 2024 on that matter, because that survey you're referring to was done in 2019. Yes, it's in the report, but the survey that has just been done in 2024 has shown a significant improvement. So we are now sitting at 43% of businesses that are still informal. So that number has, dropped from 75% to 43%, partly because of the work that organizations such as SEDCO are doing, because they are going out to the communities, explaining to small and medium enterprises why it's important to formalize, why it's important to keep records, why it's important to have a proper governance structure, why it's important to separate your personal affairs from
the business.
And people are responding very positively on that. According to this new policy, in 2029 we want to be at 15%. So this is exactly my point, to say the policy then sort of helps you to say what is your aspirational goal. And then the strategy says, how are you going to get from the 43% to 15%? So we have a lot of activities then that we will venture into, working with the Center for Financial Inclusion under the Ministry of Finance to ensure that as many as we possibly can get to formalize, do actually formalize.
And I think also there is a thought we need to come to with the small business people themselves, Honorable Minister.
Right.
Is there a thinking that if I register my business, perhaps I stand to suffer in some kind of way, which is why they are holding back in terms of formalizing their businesses. And perhaps one of those issues is the fact that we will be taxed, and I think they view tax in a certain way, And how do we deal with this in terms of mindset change, and how is this policy accommodating that to say we need to get our small businesses to appreciate the role that they also need to play in terms of contributing to the national economy. But they will still hold back because they say that ERS will then start demanding certain things which we are not ready to do. And I think we need to deal with that from this policy point of view as well.
So from where I see it and from my experience, having done this job for now close to 7 years, the reasons that people fear being formalized are a few. One of them is the cost of formalizing a business is very high in this country. So we are already talking as a ministry, as a consequence of this policy, to say a registration of a business should be as close to zero emalangeni as possible. Development of a business plan should be as close to zero emalangeni as possible. I don't hold a view that it should be absolutely free, because if you aspire to be a business person, then we then encourage a culture where you're getting things for free. Then you're probably not going to be a successful business person, because business is about solving a problem, but in solving a problem, you will spend money and make money and then enjoy
managing cost and everything.
Yeah, exactly. So if we then start creating a culture where everything is free, we might be negating this very same message we are trying to propagate, that you must be a business person and you must be able to. But I think it should go down, and I think what you will see over the next year or two is a significant reduction in the cost of establishing a business and getting a business plan. The second
that would
one
be
is
a great thing, actually,
yeah,
Honorable Minister.
yeah.
Let's make an example with,
Yeah.
for instance, trading licenses.
Sure. Yeah.
A small business person pays almost, not really almost, they pay the same amount for the trading license that a giant company pays.
Yeah.
Let me just make an example with a distributor.
Sure.
A trading license for a distributor costs about 2,500 emalangeni.
Right.
And if I aspire to venture into that space as a small business person,
Yeah.
I am expected to pay the 2,500. By what you are saying, are you implying that perhaps we could see provisions being made for those that are starting out in business?
I'm committing that you will see those changes, because
Okay.
it's a conversation that is far advanced with the relevant stakeholders, and in a very reasonable amount of time, you will get to see that particular change. It's part of the transformation that His Majesty, speaks about. If you do that, the number of people that will formalize will shoot up. Number two, it's this whole idea of taxation. But the good thing is that now, with the introduction of a provisional tax regime by the Minister of Finance, it really makes it easy for businesses to know, the taxable brackets and where they sit. And right now we are finding that a lot of the people that get engaged through, for example, SETCO, are able to realize that for, their business, they are not necessarily going to be hit hard on tax, and then they are responding by, registering. There are bad business practices. For example, if you sell something and you charge me VAT, it's not your money, it is the government's money. So people that then spend that money in their business feel that they are now being unfairly treated by government when the government goes after that money. But it goes back to my core point before, to say we need to educate people from the grassroots so that by the time they get to start their business, the business culture is well understood, that what belongs to government belongs to government.
Yeah, and I think, sorry, Honourable Minister, you had mentioned the issue of, and you keep mentioning it, the issue of capacitation and educating our small business people. And I think one of the things we need to do and to focus on is to help them appreciate that they are existing within an economy. Yes, and government always laments the fact that we need to increase our tax base, or to look at means of how we can increase our revenue from within our local sources. And one of those issues is, if we increase the tax base using the SME, we will be able then to derive and to increase, to generate more revenue for ourselves as a country. But that will take a lot of education, Honourable Minister. We don't want to grow small business people that are not contributing to the tax base in the country, What exactly is this policy saying about that? Because this is a big issue for Eswatini in terms of the government and how we run the country. If we talk about 70,000 small and medium enterprises, that's a huge number. If we get them to function in the realms of 100,000s, millions and things like that, it will be a lot of revenue for the government. But it will take a lot of education and a lot of mindset. What is the policy saying about educating these small business people from a grassroots level?
So the pillar that speaks about business capacitation adequately unpacks this. In other words, we endeavor to ensure that every MSME in the country is well informed and well educated, and the information is easily accessible. Minister ICT speaks about government in your hand. We will in the very near future have, all of that information literally in the palm of everybody's hand, so that they can understand the linkages between a thriving MSME sector. I don't know if you know, John, but in most developed economies, 65% or better of the economy sits in the hands of MSMEs. And that's why those countries thrive, because there is, decentralization of wealth, the spreading of wealth to all, segments of society. But in Eswatini, that number is below 10%. And then that's why you've got what we call a very high income inequality situation in Eswatini. So we need to get the 90,000 plus MSMEs, because the latest number is 90,000 SMEs. 70,000 was way back in 2019 again, but 2024 stats, we've got about 90,000 MSMEs now. We need to get those to formalize. We need to get those to participate, not on a subsistence level, but on a level that really makes them thrive, so that they can contribute to the economy. Our philosophy as a government is less taxes, but more people getting into the tax bracket, so that, the economy then thrives. Government makes more money when the ordinary citizen spends. They go out for a dinner, they go to KFC, they go and buy what they like in shops. That's how government makes money. If government wants to make money by taxing people more, we will bankrupt the country. because really that model hasn't worked well anywhere. Countries that have really succeeded, you reduce the tax base, you allow more investments, you allow the MSMEs to invest and reinvest, and then you increase your tax base. But the power of governments that collect money is in spending.
Of course, thank you so much, Honorable Minister. When we come back, I will ask the Honorable Minister about what the policy says about access to markets. And we have a lot of produce and production happening in the country, but at the same time, we still have a lot of similar products that are found in and produced in the country that are still coming from outside the country. How do we protect the young business people from competing with those that are already thriving in other markets outside of Eswatini?
Dive into a thriving and diverse art scene. Simply follow our hosts in Artsy Africa. Come with me. 6 African cities, so many voices. What attracted me was the large canvas for expression. These artists are reshaping how we see contemporary art. Artsy Africa. Have a look. The vibrant series on DW.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.za. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.sz.
This is my first time here.
Hopefully it's my last. My dear friends, here we are, all in our true colors. Your transfer papers, your key to the Mvule Kingdom.
Hi, I'm Lisa. I know.
Here are your clippers. Clippers.
Who's in? We are prefects. We run this place. So let's act like it.
Solomon, the head prefect, quick. Is my collar straight?
We'll be out of Mvule High before you can pronounce the word scholarship.
We have a mystery to solve. The only way we can make a difference is if we stick together. When I'm head prefect, each and every student will have a voice.
You need to show that new squeak in Mvule.
I hate this school!
Sehlelweni Embili kanye sikhulumisa ke indzaba ye-SME policy maswahla mahle lethulwe nguhulumende ke waseswatini ngaphasi kwelitiko ke le-Ministry of Commerce, Industry and Trade, elitiko ke letekuthengiselana netemabhizinisi ekhaya ke eSwatini losuka kumnyaka wa-2024 yeke kumnyaka wa-2029. Indzaba yemarket siyaxoxelana Honorable Minister kwindzaba yokuthi kusesekuningi lokuchamuka ngaphandle kodwa lokutholakala la ekhaya ke eSwatini ngabe kungentiwa njani. Honorable Minister, what can we do? The issue of access to markets. People are skilled, you know. There are a lot of people with vocations that when you see their work, you are amazed at the things they produce, both from an agricultural perspective and maybe other areas, you know. But you find that there's a difficulty in accessing markets that speak to the aspirations of growing a business, you know. What is this policy saying? What do we need to do as a country to protect the small business people, you know? We are now formalizing the business, that's good enough, you know, but where are the markets going to come from?
Perez, ngicela ukubeka ngeSiswati lokho.
Yes.
Le ndzaba ye access to market ngiyona lengathi ingcikitsi yale policy ngoba sicale sabuka lokho ukuthi umuntu uthenga la athandza khona ma-laws of supply and demand asho njalo. Uma ngabe kude lesitakwenda singihulumende ukuthi sende umthetho lotowuniketa emaswati i-advantage noma kuma-services noma ngilokulinywako noma ngema-goods noma ngilokudliwako lo ngakuthola noma ngabe nguphi side indlela kwekuthi emaswati ayithola njani i-advantage lokukhanza kusuke kuyendeka ukuthi bantu benta loko labakutayele uma ngabe bengiye ngithenge ama-orange kulenye ifarm lenkulu lese Emelo iwalethe iwafake onke lama supermarket la kaNgwane and ashiphile uma sine singihulumende singakendi ipolicy noma ke ema-regulations nemthetho lotawukwenda ukuthi lamaswati aniketwe lelithuba kutawenda ukuthi kugcina kungakendeki ngiko-ke sente le-Citizens Economic Empowerment Act lese ikhona isebenta under i-council lebitwa i-Citizens Economic Empowerment Council chairman wayo ngibabe Lincoln Motsa nyalo-ke benta ama-regulations latakwenda siqiniseko ukuthi wonke muntu lothi ufuna kulima ngiyabekisa noma-ke akhulise tinyosi la kaNgwane utawuthi kuqala umnyaka bonke letitolo leti la kaNgwane sadi ukuthi badzinga luju longakanani bese bayanikwa labo bantu labo ukuthi kulolu luju lodzinga letitolo la kaNgwane ningaproducer lolungakanani nini kusho bona ukuthi sitawuproducer lolungaka bese ke bathola le off-take agreement kuze kwekuthi baqala nje lokuproducer babe sebadi kwekuthi ngiproducela OK Foods ngiproducela Pick and Pay ngiproducela Boxer ngiproducela Spar etc sekuyathathwa ke kutaba semthethweni lokho so what's going to be different with this policy is that we are formalizing everything into laws and regulations lama regulations nje kusasa ndabe kunemhlangano nale consultant lesentela lama regulations sayikunika ukuthi i-draft iseyithini ngoba ngifuna kuyawa establish iparliament masinyane kuze kwekuthi loyo muntu lothi ngakhe amafastelo mina kunalenye ijanje lela wena entrepreneur of the year lakhe amafastelo lamahle ma door frames lamahle magede lamahle but solo siyawaletha amafastelo eSouth Africa nyalo kulomthetho that mangabe nemafirm lakhe amafastelo hlanganani nibe inhlangano nonke noma ngabe individual sidabe sesiyan engage kwekuthi mangakhe amafastelo lathengwa ngibuild it lathengwa cash build lathengwa buy cash nawo onke lama hardware shops lesinawo la kaNgwane bese ke sekuba netivumelano ukuthi ndawathengisa abe ngilangaka so kwenta kuthini ke lokho lo mfu noma sayibhanga yoboleka imali sebatamnika ngani ngoba so nayo le access to market so ifocus yale policy kwekuthi sitaqala la khaya sende siqiniseke ukuthi kuba nema regulations la niketa emaswati lamathuba they get first preference and then we then expand ngoba kutasita ke when we start accessing the AfCFTA market we would have built the capacity because it's very difficult for people to start looking to export these things and these services to other markets in the continent when they can't even, satisfy the local market.
Of course, I do want to speak to the issue of creating capacity for supplying markets, and I think the issue of funding is a big issue. But I think before we get into that, because you've already touched on that, Honorable Minister, there's this aspect of patriotism that Eswatini needs to uphold when it comes to supporting the activity, the trade activity that happens within the kingdom. We still bring from outside the country things that our next door neighbors are producing at a good quality. His Majesty spoke about this when he mentioned the Buy Eswatini campaign. What can we do? Because we need to be our own market first. If we don't support each other, whatever we do, we may lend people money, we can create capacity. But if Eswatini are still choosing to buy outside things that are already available in the country, it defeats the purpose.
It does, and I was extremely excited when His Majesty mentioned the fact that let's support the Buy Eswatini campaign. And in the very near future, I'll be actually launching an awareness campaign that is driven by the private sector. A company called The Peculiar People that has taken His Majesty's call, and they're saying we want to take the lead in making Emaswati aware of what is actually available in Eswatini. The problem we need to solve is that of adequate capacity in terms of quantities. So we don't want a situation where somebody says, no, I can give you, dishwasher liquid and supply you for your market. And then you walk into a supermarket and you find empty shelves because that person's production capacity is much lower than the demand. So we have now introduced a program, and I'm grateful because I believe Parliament will pass this particular budget that we are going to call cottage factories. The cottage factories are going to focus on these people that are producing for the retail sector in Eswatini and make sure that they are capacitated, number one, from a quantity point of view. So what is your demand? What does your off-taker want? Number two, what is the quality requirement? And we will then introduce a program called Ingelo certification that says if it's a food product, there must be a food safety standard approval or certification on that particular product. And Eswasa is going to be able to do that through this Ingelo certification program. Number three, what is the price? Because let us not fool each other. We're not going to say buy the door frames in Eswatini, but the door frames will be twice what you should be paying if you're buying them in the region, because again, that does not make business sense. So we will be speaking to these, thriving establishments, these MSMEs, to say, how do we help you to do, a cost optimization exercise through your particular program? And SETCO is actually going to be working very much hand in glove with Eswasa to make sure that these things happen.
Yeah, and perhaps this last one, Minister, can you please just compress it a little bit for me? The issue of funding and the argument from the banking sector is quite valid, the lack of confidence from those seeking to get funding from banks in particular, to the point where you find the business ideas are viable, just that the bank doesn't have confidence at that particular time. But what other models can we look at to try and support these businesses? Because most of them are stalled because of the issue of capital.
Yes.
What other avenues is the policy saying, if we cannot access funding via a financial institution, perhaps this is what we need to do?
One of the things that has been government's intervention is what we call the loan guarantee scheme, where government has made available through the Central Bank of Eswatini funds that will help you to actually, serve as collateral and sometimes serve as a deposit when you're looking for a loan. Now, the uptake of this is very, very low. One of the main reasons is the banking institutions are saying the quality of the business proposals are not satisfactory. So when they look at the business proposal, they look at it and say, we don't believe you'll be able to repay this level of installment, even if we give you this collateral, even if we give you this deposit. So we are working on a program to ensure that business case development is a very, very strong feature of this particular policy, so that the number of business loan applications that actually make it through the system improves quite a bit. Having said that, I do want to be a little bit controversial. I'm not exactly happy with our banking industry. I think they're too stringent. And they basically are not giving our MSMEs enough credit. To your point earlier in the conversation, we see people in this country that are extremely talented at business, and it's frustrating when even those people struggle to get a loan, where they have a very a clear business case. So it's an ongoing conversation with the Ministry of Finance through the Financial Inclusion Initiative led by Sizakele Dlamini to say, how do we bridge that gap between what the banks expect and what our MSMEs expect. We will continue having these conversations. We've also then, opened up the loan guarantee scheme, because previously you could only access it through banking institutions, but now you can access this, loan guarantee scheme through non-bank financial institutions such as FinCorp, such as ITCE, formerly SIDC, and others. So if you want to get more information how this can, help you and enhance your business case, you can contact SEDCO, you can contact the MSME department, FinCorp, ITCE, Eswatini Bank, and others that will help with that particular problem. The last point I want to make on this particular issue is a concept called social capital. Social capital says, if I give you my $100 and you say I will give it back to you on Friday at 10 o'clock, 10 o'clock Friday, it must be in my account.
Be there.
There's work that as a culture, as a country, we need to do to improve on this, because some people take that commitment as a suggestion rather than as a commitment. And it flows into our business culture where somebody gets paid before they can exhaust all their obligations. They've taken care of other, discretionary spending. And then what happens is that the banks are left wanting to say what happened. And Eswatini, my plea is, let us understand that will cost you. That will cost your business. That will cost your reputation. If I have 30 more seconds, one of the banks, First National Bank, we work with them on the Entrepreneur of the Year, program. They've actually come up with an automated way to, determine your credit worthiness. So they look at all your personal spending in your account, your personal spending habits when you get paid, and then they look at your business and they look at all your spending, and then the algorithm then says, is this person high risk or is this person low risk? So your behavior is not going unnoticed.
It's also something that needs to be corrected.
Yeah.
Honorable Minister, thank you so much. I wish we had more time just to dissect into some of these other pillars, but I think you have spoken in detail in terms of what this aspires to do for the country. We could talk about the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, but I think it is not necessary at this point if we are still unable to meet local demand, because like you were saying, we need to create capacity to meet local demand first. Thank you so much once again, Honorable Minister, and we are looking forward to a time in 2029 where we are looking at the numbers once again, and they're speaking differently from what they are right now.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the time.
Thank you so much, Honorable Minister. Sibongile maswahla amahle ke ehlelweni Embili kanye le nkulumo le maswahla amahle ke inema outcomes lengiwatfokotela kakhulu. Kunetinto Honorable Minister lesakavele kade igijimisa letiya ke eParliament naletinye ke lekavela ashite ke lokuthi tingema commitments letifake ekhathe ke tindzaba ukuthi in as much as discussions are still ongoing, but tindzaba tema licensings nema registrations of small business people, these are things the ministry is working, and we are looking to a time where in 2029 perhaps we can say this has changed. Maybe small business people have certain privileges. Labe bete wona lokhu bese ikhulumisa ke lenzaba maswahla amahle libito lami ngiJohn ngakaphires Sibongo Jehova kasigcine sibonana ngalokudako siphilile nisale kahle.
Sometimes we look good, we put our makeup and we dress up, but inside we are hurting. Inside we've got problems, we've got situations, but I want you to know that God loves you. He cares about you. Ooh, minister to yourself and say, Unandama nami Yesu. Unanda. Hey. Unandama. Yesu. Sing it one more time. Tirikana bakondanga na nanyi mere ipio na ipio. Yesu.
Yamfuna nane Jesu, yamfuna nane. Urina Jesu, Jesu.